Chapter 2. Bullies. The first week at UE Academy taught Artemis Golmir something quickly. Arc society had layers. And the academy was where those layers became visible. Students arrived wearing the same grey unevaluated uniform, but that uniform did not make them equal. Not really. You could see it in how they walked, how they talked, who they sat beside during lectures, whose parents waited outside the academy gates at the end of the day. Artemis noticed everything. He noticed the subtle color trims sewn into certain uniforms that technically weren't allowed but somehow always slipped past inspection. He noticed the expensive datapads some students carried compared to the older communal models issued to unevaluated housing students. He noticed which last names made instructors straighten slightly, and which ones made them sigh. Artemis's name didn't do anything. Golmir. Just another Terran surname. No reputation. No prestige. No living parents to stand behind it. That alone was enough to make him different. But there were other things too. He was quiet. Not shy, just observant. While most students talked loudly during breaks, Artemis usually sat somewhere off to the side studying the room like he was mapping a system. He watched how people behaved, how alliances formed, how the academy worked. He watched instructors, security patrols, door access schedules, patterns. Everything had patterns. But students didn't like being watched, especially the kind who were used to being the center of attention. Which was how Artemis Golmir became an easy target. It started with comments. Small ones. Whispers when he walked past. Orphan. Tunnel rat. Unevaluated housing. He ignored them. Words didn't mean much to him. He had heard worse in the dorms growing up. But there was a particular group that seemed especially interested in him. 3 boys. Second-generation directorate families. Everyone knew it even if they didn't say it out loud. Directorate children had a certain look. Perfect posture. Confident smiles. An assumption that every room belonged to them. The largest of the 3 was named Darian Voss. Broad shoulders. Dark hair always styled perfectly. The kind of kid who had never once worried about where he would sleep or who would pay for his education. His father was rumored to be a mid-ranking directorate official. Which meant Darian had spent his entire life believing he was important. The other 2 followed him everywhere. Lorne Hale. And Jax Rith. Artemis noticed them watching him during lunch on the 3rd day. By the 4th day they had started making comments loud enough for him to hear. Hey look. Tunnel rat eats alone again. Maybe he's scanning the room for loose wiring. Artemis ignored them. He had better things to think about. Like the academy's network infrastructure. He had already discovered the student terminal system ran on a segmented access grid. Which meant if someone found the right bridge node, well, that was a problem for another time. But Darian Voss didn't like being ignored. People like him rarely did. The confrontation happened on the 7th day. Classes had just ended for the afternoon. Students filled the corridors heading toward dorm sectors, cafeterias, and recreation decks. Artemis preferred the quieter routes through the academy. Less noise. Less chaos. Better for thinking. He was halfway down a cargo corridor when the footsteps behind him sped up. Then stopped. Blocking his path. 3 figures. Darian. Lorne. Jax. The corridor itself was wide but mostly empty, used for transporting supply crates between academy storage bays. Overhead lights buzzed softly. The Ark's constant mechanical heartbeat hummed through the metal walls. Artemis stopped walking. He already knew how this would go. Darian stepped forward slowly. Up close he was even larger than Artemis had realized. "Well, look at that," Darian said, smiling in a way that wasn't friendly. "Unevaluated housing trash wandering the academy alone." Lorne snorted. "Maybe he's looking for spare parts." Jax crossed his arms. "Or somewhere to sleep." Artemis sighed quietly. He had hoped they would get bored eventually. Apparently not. He glanced at the three of them. Then at the open corridor behind them. Then back again. "Can I go now?" Artemis asked. The words came out flat. Not defiant. Just tired. Darian's smile vanished. The first shove came without warning. Darian pushed him hard in the chest. Artemis staggered backward 2 steps. His shoulder hit the wall with a dull metallic thud. But he didn't fall. Darian seemed annoyed by that. "Didn't say you could leave." The second shove came harder. This time Darian grabbed the front of Artemis's uniform and slammed him into the wall. The metal behind Artemis vibrated from the impact. Lorne laughed. Jax stepped closer. "You hear that?" Jax said. He sighed earlier. "Like we're bothering him." Artemis's patience ended right there. Years inside Ark maintenance tunnels had taught him many things. How to move silently. How to squeeze through impossible spaces. How to run when security drones appeared. But the tunnels had also taught him something else. When you were trapped in a narrow space with someone bigger than you had to move faster. And you had to hit smarter. Darian pulled his arm back to shove Artemis again. The swing turned into a punch instead. A wide, sloppy punch. Artemis moved instantly. He ducked under it. Stepped forward. His elbow drove sharply into Darian's ribs. Not randomly. Right between 2 floating ribs. Exactly where the nerve cluster sat. Darian's breath exploded out of him in a wheezing gasp. Before he could react, Artemis's palm shot upward, striking under Darian's chin. The impact snapped Darian's head back. His legs wobbled. Then he dropped. Hard. For a moment the corridor was silent. Lorne and Jax stared at their friend crumpled on the floor. Their brains clearly trying to process what had just happened. Artemis straightened slowly. He rolled his shoulders once. Then cracked his knuckles. "You done?" he asked calmly. Neither of them answered. Neither of them moved. They just stared. Artemis stepped around Darian's unconscious body and walked past them. No one stopped him. Behind him Darian groaned faintly. But Artemis didn't look back. Word spread through UE Academy faster than any official announcement ever could. By the next morning everyone had heard some version of the story. The quiet kid from unevaluated housing had dropped Darian Voss in 1 hit. Some versions said 2 hits. Some said 5. One version claimed Artemis had broken Darian's jaw. That one wasn't true. But the truth hardly mattered. The message traveled faster than the details. Artemis Golmir wasn't easy prey. The whispers changed. Students still watched him. But now there was something different in their expressions. Curiosity. Respect. Caution. Even the instructors seemed aware something had happened. Darian returned to class 2 days later. Bruised. Angry. But noticeably quieter. He never approached Artemis again. Neither did Lorne or Jax. The bullying stopped. Mostly. And Artemis Golmir returned to what he preferred doing best. Watching. Learning. And slowly, quietly. Understanding the Ark. This ends Chapter 2 of Artemis Arcs of Terror. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment and subscribe for more.